Here's a little tip for you. If you cut on the fold and you cut out two, obviously you have two layers here, you can take, this is the back piece, the front piece is the same as the back piece, except obviously it has the different neck, and then you cut along here. So if you cut an extra one of the back pieces out, all you have to do is trim this and cut along here, and it's much easier than trying to cut a little piece of fabric that's this big. Alright, I got all of my pieces cut out. I have my gusset, my two sleeves, I have the front and the back, and then rather than cutting out little tiny cuffs and a random piece like this, I cut my strip the whole width of the fabric, and I do it at 4 inches, so then I have plenty of room for the cuff and also for the placket, and then I just cut this in half to 2 inches for the placket at the length that I need. But that way it's much easier than trying to do them like this, and I'll show you a little trick that I do when I do the cuffs as well. This is the interfacing, the knit interfacing that I'm using. It was right next to the by the yard interfacing. It's 20 inches by 1 yard, and it was just pre-packaged already. So you can see this is the knit. It's stretchy. One side, this side has the little dots that melt when you iron it, and then the other side is just soft. So I cut my my material at 4 inches, so I want to make this just a tiny bit shorter. So I have it at, you can see it's just under 4 inches so that it doesn't like stick to the iron or the ironing board. So I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of this so that I have extra, so that I don't have to worry about trying to add more. So as you can see, I have ironed my interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. Make sure that when you do it, you have the stretch going with the fabric. Otherwise, because the interfacing is not 4-way stretch, so you will not be able to use it if you don't have it going the right direction. The very first thing you're going to do is you're going to sew or serge these 2 shoulder pieces. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to do is after you've sewn your shoulder seams, you're going to turn it right side out, and then with your strip that you have, I cut it into a 2-inch strip, and we're going to start here, and we're going to do right sides together and sew all the way around down the front of the leg. When you go around the neckline, you need to pull it a little bit, but then once you get to about here, you're just going to lay it flat as you sew the rest of it. So now we have our snap binding, facing, whatever you want to call it, all serged on or sewn on, and then now you're going to want to iron it and make sure that it faces down like this, and then you're going to top stitch right along the edge all the way around, so that it lays nice and flat and doesn't roll. Facing all ironed, top stitched, and now it's time to do this one. So up here at the top, because we don't want to have a raw edge when we put this binding on right here, what you're going to do is turn your facing inside out like this, and you're going to sew along this short edge right here. Okay, so with the inside facing, you've sewn your edge, and then you turn it right side out, poke out the corner, and that will give you a nice finished edge when you go to sew. So now you put right sides together, and then you're going to sew. So when this is opened, it's going to be a nice finished edge. If you have serged it and you have a tail, if you cut it, you can have all these little exposed threads right here. So what I like to do is I either have a teeny tiny, what size is this? Number 1 crochet hook, or I use a wide head needle, and then you can weave the ends back in there so it gets nice, and you won't have all these little threads sticking. Alright, we got the facings on both pieces now, ironed and top stitched. You're going to line up and pin the bottom, because now we're going to treat these 2 pieces as one front piece, and now we're going to put on the snaps. I found that about 2.5 inches is a good spacing between snaps on here, and since there's not like a mark for where this is supposed to line up, if you line it up on the bottom and then overlay it and lay it nice and flat, you know that this should be where your first pin starts, or your first snap starts. So what I like to do is I figure out where the center of that is, so it's nice and lined up, and then I'm going to mark it with a pencil, or with my pen right here. And all of these marks that you're putting on here are going to be covered up by the snap, so it's fine. So then you're just going to mark 2.5 inches all the way down till you get down to the bottom. Right, all of our snaps are on. They look very nice. They're evenly spaced out. This is the preemie size, so I only had to use 6. But now if you have obviously coordinating color snaps, it will look very nice. But I only have white, and I have like 4,000 of them, so I'm going to use what I have. But the very next step is to add the gusset. So the gusset is going to be attached to the front first. So you're going to find the center, you're going to line it up, and you're going to pin it on here and then sew it on. The gusset is all sewn on, so now it is time to move on to the sleeves. So you're going to lay your sleeper open flat like this, and then you're going to get your sleeve pieces, and since you already know where the center is, you're going to line up this center with the shoulder seam, and then you're going to pin it on, and then you're going to sew while it's open and flat like this. Okay, your sleeves are sewn on. You can see it like this. Now the pattern, the next step, it calls for putting them right sides out, starting at the wrist and then sewing all the way down like that. But trying to sew a cuff on an opening that is this small is very difficult. So what I like to do is, remember that big strip that we had earlier? This one, I still have it nice and long. I haven't cut it up into pieces. I fold it in half like this, and then making sure that it's face up. You don't want it to be upside down on the bottom of the sleeve. You want it to be right side up. So you put it here at the edge, overlap it a little bit because it's easier, and then you're going to stretch this as you sew, and then you're going to attach it to this piece as well. So now you attach the binding, and as you pulled this, it gives this a nice little stretch for the arm cuff. And then I pulled the other sleeve around here, and then I'm going to cut it here and here, and you will have 2 cuffs that are much easier to sew together. So now that we have the cuffs all sewn on, I have them pinned at the edge, and then wherever there's a seam that's important that I don't want them to, one seam be here and the other seam be here, I pin them and line them up. So now you're going to sew from the edge of the wrist to the armpit all the way down to the bottom on both sides. So just like we did with the neck binding where we wanted to finish the edge, if you've serged it, you don't want to clip it because it'll just have little strings hanging out. So if you thread it in your needle, put it back through, and then pull it through, it will give a nice clean edge right there without getting all your threads, and then you just clip it right. We are almost done. We have serged or sewn all the way from the wrist cuff all the way down to the ankle, and this is now one piece like that. And just like we did the cuffs on there, trying to sew a cuff, even though this is a little bit bigger than the wrist, it still is tight and it's hard to do. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to open this up, put right sides together, and then you're going to pull this as you sew, and you're going to attach the cuffs just like we did with the wrists. All right, we got our little cuff pieces sewn on. I lined up the seams here, and this is the very last step. All we're going to do is pin and sew the legs together, but you have the gusset here. So just like you did on the front where you found the center, lined it up and pinned it, you're going to do the same thing, and then you're just going to enclose the edge of it in like this when you get there, and then you're going to sew this all the way up and around, and then again, if you're serging, leave a tail so that you can weave it in. And we are done. Yay! So here's the gusset all finished. Gives extra room. Some people don't add this in there, but if you cloth diaper or have just extra bulk. This gives just a little bit of extra room so that everything can fit in there easier without pulling on and puckering like on the snaps and everything. But little cuffs are done. Everything looks good.